It started with a silence. Not the kind that follows peace, but the kind that screams something is horribly wrong. Station 9. Gamma was one of humanity's oldest off-Earth colonies. Settled, thriving, proud. Nearly 3 million civilians lived there. Families, engineers, miners, even artists. The kind of people who built legacies, not weapons. Then, one morning, Earth Command lost all contact. No distress signal, no emergency pings, nothing. Colonel Trent Maddox was on orbital patrol around Titan when the blackout hit. A decorated war dog, 30 years deep into the black void of space, he'd seen pirate raids, Zykari border conflicts, and even a failed rebellion on Europa. But he'd never seen an entire colony go dark in one breath. He watched the data feed in the command chamber of the Resolute, his warship, as the transmission logs hit a dead wall. One moment, life signs, news, commerce logs. Next, digital death. "We're not talking technical failure," his XO, Bennett, muttered beside him, shaking his head. "This is extinction." By the time reconnaissance probes reached 9 Gamma, it was too late. The planet was gone. Not bombed, not invaded. Glass. The kind of smooth, blackened terrain that only one type of weapon could leave behind. Carthan planetary razors. The Carthians had always kept their distance, a xenophobic race of crystalline-skinned aliens who believed humans were impurities in the galactic order. They'd snarled in council meetings, refused treaties, but never pulled a trigger. Until now. No warnings, no ultimatums, no negotiations, just annihilation, and among the casualties, Maddox's only son, Eric, a miner, 27, soft-spoken, a good man. His body would never be found. That day, something inside Maddox died. Whatever diplomacy Earth thought it could still manage with the aliens, he no longer cared. And neither did the Terran Senate. The footage of the charred planet swept across every human screen. Children vaporized, cities erased, orbital stations shattered like glass. Billions watched. Billions felt their blood run cold. Within a week, Earth's scattered fleets began to converge. Terran shipyards ramped into a war fever. New conscripts flooded the enlistment stations. Entire mining colonies retooled into munitions plants. Every retired admiral returned to duty. Every debt was erased for anyone who joined the cause. This wasn't justice. This was fury. By month's end, 700,000 warships had been constructed, commissioned, and deployed. Not all were perfect. Many were retrofit civilian vessels armed with nuclear cores and scrap iron hulls. But what they lacked in elegance, they made up for in sheer human resolve. They darkened the stars above Earth's skies like a tidal wave of metal. Colonel Maddox was appointed Supreme Commander of the entire retaliatory force. "Wipe them out," President Harlan said, eyes full of fire, no notes in his speech. "Leave nothing standing. They wanted to test the will of humanity. Let's show them what hell looks like when it flies under our banner." Now, aboard the Resolute, Maddox stood at the command window of the flagship fleet, staring into the abyss where the Carthan homeworld spun peacefully, unaware of what was coming. But this wouldn't be a surgical strike. This would be a reckoning. The fleet surged forward like a cosmic avalanche, metal, fire, and fury stretching across parsecs. 700,000 human vessels didn't move with grace. They moved with purpose, an armada that could block out stars, murder moons, and shatter empires. Colonel Trent Maddox stood in the war room of the Resolute, holograms flickering blue and red across his scarred face. He didn't need to speak. His presence silenced even the most decorated officers. His grief had calcified into something darker. A man whose blood had been boiled and frozen too many times to fear anything. "Status," he muttered, eyes fixed on the fleet map. Commander Bennett responded instantly. All strike formations holding velocity. Omega Wing reports full weapon sync. We'll be within firing range of the Carthan outer colonies in 6 hours. Maddox didn't nod, didn't blink. His jaw tensed. Any signs of resistance? None. Their border patrols have gone dark. Either they're pulling back or hiding behind their planetary shields. Good, Maddox said flatly. Cowards die slower. Silence again. The officers around him didn't question the tone. They all felt it. This wasn't about tactics anymore. This wasn't chess. This was war the way humans used to make it. Raw, bloody, and personal. The first contact came sooner than expected. 2 hours later, in the black void surrounding the Carthan moon fortress, a small scout fleet decloaked. Just 18 ships, no larger than Terran corvettes. They didn't transmit a warning. No words, no hails. They just opened fire. Maddox watched from the bridge window as beams of ultraviolet light tore through space, one slicing a path inches from the Resolute's hull. "Shield integrity holding," came a shout from the tech officer's console. He didn't flinch. "Return fire." It wasn't a counterstrike. It was an execution. Within 90 seconds, every Carthan scout ship was reduced to floating debris. Maddox didn't even bother watching the destruction. He just turned back to the hologram of their next target, the colony of Vtora. Population: 112 million Carthans. Location: core sector. Defenses: planetary shield grid, 4 orbital cannons, and a space station that glowed with the energy of 3 suns. It didn't matter. "This is the message," Maddox said calmly, more to himself than to his officers. "Not just for them. For anyone who thinks they can butcher our children and sleep peacefully." He gave the command. The Armada split into 4 lines: Vanguard, Spearhead, Anvil, and Shadow Wing. Each wave had one job: demolish everything between them and the planet. Destroy not just the military outposts, but the symbols of power, the cathedrals, the towers, the orbiting palaces. The first barrage lit up the galaxy. Thousands of missiles screamed through the void, trailed by wave after wave of plasma bursts and solar lances. The Carthan orbital station tried to retaliate, launching beam clusters and kinetic slugs. Some even scored hits. But against a sea of 700,000 warships, it was like throwing gravel at a tidal wave. Maddox watched the monitors coldly as their missiles broke the station's hull, ruptured its core, and ignited its reactor. The explosion lit up the bridge like a second sun. "Vetora's orbit cleared," Bennett confirmed. "Planetary shield grid is next." Maddox leaned forward. "Deploy Blackfire." The room tensed. Blackfire was no ordinary weapon. It was a prototype, half illegal, never tested outside simulations. A dark matter payload designed to twist space around the target, destabilizing the planet's protective barrier at a molecular level. No one questioned him. 5 dreadnoughts broke formation, gliding toward Vtora. They launched 5 Blackfire torpedoes, each one gleaming with a violet glow that bent the light around it. A hum filled the ship, a low, vibrating groan that made stomachs turn and teeth ache. The shields didn't just fall, they screamed. The energy dome around Vtora rippled, cracked, and then imploded inward. Cities across the surface erupted in chaos. Civilians, warriors, priests. No one had time to understand what was happening. One moment, their skies shimmered with protective light. The next, they were naked under the Terran hammer. Maddox gave the order without emotion. "Level the surface." And they did. Thousands of kinetic rods, pure tungsten, dropped at orbital speeds, fell like God's wrath. Entire mountain ranges cracked apart, oceans boiled, Urban centers vanished under mile-wide craters. It wasn't a battle. It was extermination. On the ground, the Carthians tried to flee, to pray, to fire useless artillery into the heavens. But nothing reached the sky. Every launcher, every defensive cannon was obliterated before it could lock onto a single human ship. 30 minutes later, Vtora was silent. No life signs, no transmissions, no movement. A colony of 112 million. Erased. Maddox stared at the readings. A flicker of something passed across his face. Not guilt, not doubt, just memory. He saw his son again. Eric, leaning against the shuttle before his last departure. Grinning, saying, "I'll send you vids, Dad. You'll love what we're building down there." That was 2 weeks before the Carthians turned his colony into glass. "Prepare jump to the next system," Maddox said quietly. The officers nodded, but Commander Bennett hesitated for the first time. "Sir," he said, voice low, "we're getting flagged by Terran High Command." Maddox raised an eyebrow. They say we've gone too far. That planetary genocide will spark galactic backlash. That we've already made our point." Maddox walked toward him slowly. Then he said the words that would echo for generations. "They made their point with 3 million dead civilians. Ours isn't done until every Carthian world is ash." No one spoke after that. Across the fleet, the orders went out. Rearm, reboot, realign to the next target, Kalaz Prime, the Carthian homeworld's twin moon colony. Estimated population 80 million, known for its biolabs and military academies. It would be next. In his quarters, Maddox sat alone, staring at a holoframe of his son. Not smiling this time, just looking back at him with eyes that had too much promise. He didn't drink, he didn't cry, he just whispered, "I'll burn it all for you, kid." And he meant it. Back on Earth, the media split. Some called Maddox a monster, a warmonger, a butcher with too much power. Others called him humanity's shield, the iron-fisted angel of vengeance. Public polls showed 78% support for continued strikes. But the whispers of rebellion began. The Galactic Union warned of sanctions. Alien empires once neutral began mobilizing fleets. But no one moved yet. No one dared challenge humanity in the middle of its fury. Because they all knew the same truth. When humans mourn, they pray. But when humans rage, they conquer. The silence after Vtora's destruction didn't last long. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity wasn't going to grieve politely. They weren't coming with peace banners and hollow condemnations. They were coming with engines screaming and barrels hot. The stars that once sparkled with diplomatic posturing were now stained with war roots. And in the heart of the inferno sat one man, Colonel Trent Maddox. The Resolute was no longer just a flagship. It was a legend whispered across star systems with dread. Carthians called it Golar Tha, the reaping machine. Human children carved its silhouette into classroom walls with pride. For both sides, it had become a symbol. But symbols weigh heavy. As the fleet prepared its jump to Kalaz Prime, Maddox convened a council. Not because he needed advice, but because protocol demanded it. His inner circle gathered in the war chamber, where strategy was usually mapped on clean digital lines. Today, the lines were red, marked with every Carthian planet within reach. Kalaz Prime has minimal orbital defenses, Bennett began, standing beside the rotating hologram of the twin moon colony. They didn't expect us to reach this far, this fast. However, it houses the Carthian Military Academy, the next generation of commanders. "Kill them young," Maddox replied, without blinking. "Save ourselves the trouble later." Some of the officers shifted, uneasy. But no one objected. It was Admiral Roth who finally spoke. A giant of a man with cybernetic implants running down the left side of his skull. We've intercepted transmissions. Some of their young cadets are already trying to flee. Civilian transports, no weapons. Maddox looked at him flatly. You hesitating, Roth? No, sir. Just reporting. Maddox turned back to the hologram. They didn't hesitate on 9 Gamma. Civilians, children, artists, my son. A beat. Every escape ship becomes a future fleet unless it's destroyed. We don't fight to prove we're better men. We fight so this galaxy never dares raise its hand against us again. He pointed at the escape routes lighting up in orange. Shadowwing takes those corridors. Burn every last vessel before they leave the moon's gravity. Yes, sir. The plan was cruel, but effective. Kyla's prime didn't fall in a battle. It collapsed in a massacre. The orbital scans came in. 57 escape ships, all marked as civilian class, filled with cadets, scholars, and clerics. Most hadn't even finished basic training. Shadowwing intercepted all of them. No warnings, no chances. Just swift, coordinated strikes that vaporized each ship in moments. The Carthan planetary governor tried broadcasting a surrender message. Maddox never responded. Instead, the Resolute opened fire. Mass drivers pounded the moon colony like war drums, launching hypervelocity tungsten rods into strategic targets, power stations, command towers, communication hubs. What wasn't instantly destroyed, burned. What burned, crumbled. From orbit, the moon looked like a dying ember. One human soldier, Captain Ramirez of Anvil Wing, recorded a message as his squad deployed to finish the ground sweep. He looked into his helmet cam and said, "This isn't war anymore. This is punishment." It went viral within hours. Millions watched it across Earth and Terran colonies. Half applauded. The rest stayed quiet. Some began to worry. Back in the command center of the Resolute, an encrypted message arrived directly from Earth High Command. Not just the Senate, but the Inner Defense Council. Maddox opened it. The image of Chairman Veldrin appeared. A pale man with tired eyes and a politician's spine. Colonel Maddox, you've accomplished what no human in history ever has. You've brought an entire species to its knees within weeks. We acknowledge your strategic brilliance. Maddox didn't speak. But, Veldrin continued, our intelligence networks are reporting massive unrest in Galactic Union territories. The destruction of Kayla's Prime has sparked revolts. Alien factions once neutral are beginning to unify. There's talk of a preemptive alliance to stop you. Still, Maddox said nothing. We order a temporary ceasefire. Allow diplomacy to step in. Reassert our position from a place of strength, not annihilation. Then came the warning. If you continue these strikes, Colonel, you will no longer have the backing of Earth High Command. We will recall the fleet. You'll be labeled a rogue actor. Maddox leaned forward, staring into the projection. And he smiled. Not warmly, not in defiance, but the smile of a man who'd already made peace with damnation. I don't serve your politics, he said. I serve the dead. Then he ended the message. Bennett stepped forward cautiously. Sir, if High Command pulls support, we could lose supply lines, reinforcements, I Command satellites. They won't pull anything, Maddox cut in. They're afraid, just like everyone else. They'll bark, but they'll stay leashed. Still, Roth muttered, the rest of the galaxy's starting to circle us like wolves. Good, Maddox replied. Let them come. They'll learn what the Carthians did. The next target was more ambitious. Zareth-Kal, the largest Carthian religious world. Not militarized, not strategic, but symbolic. Their sacred home. Bennett hesitated for the first time. We target that. We don't just destroy armies. We destroy belief. Maddox's eyes were cold. Exactly. The fleet rerouted. 30 hours later, they reached Zarethkal. Its temples rose from the mountains like veins of light. Pilgrims knelt in great cities shaped from crystal and air. Priests walked among waterfalls, singing their ancient hymns. They looked up when the sky turned black. 700,000 warships filled their heavens, casting a shadow that stretched for miles. This time there was no resistance. The Carthians didn't raise weapons. They opened their arms, prayed, sang. Maddox gave the order. The bombardment began. Entire cities crumbled. Temples disintegrated in beams of fire. Monasteries, libraries, and ancient sanctuaries burned without hesitation. The wails from the planet echoed into the fleet's comms, raw, unfiltered cries of a species watching its soul being incinerated. Some Terran officers looked away. Others watched. No one spoke. When it was over, Zarethkal was dust. 100 million voices silenced. Not warriors, not even cadets, just believers. And Maddox, for a moment, said nothing. No commands, no speeches. He stood alone on the observation deck, looking at the smoldering planet below. Then he whispered, "You took mine. I'll take everything." But not everyone on the fleet was with him anymore. In the lower decks of the Resolute, whispers had begun. Officers from Earth, pilots from the outer colonies, Marines with too many ghosts in their helmets. Some called it justice, others called it madness. But Maddox didn't care, because he knew what was coming next. The Carthians had sent their final plea, an encrypted message transmitted to the Terran fleet, to Earth, and to the Galactic Union. They offered unconditional surrender. Their High Regent bowed before the camera, crystal skin cracked with shame. "We yield. We will disarm. We offer tribute. We will exile those who gave the order to attack 9 Gamma. We only ask for mercy." Maddox watched the message. He didn't flinch, didn't speak. He just walked to the command panel and set course for the Carthian homeworld. "Mercy," he said, "is a human luxury." The Carthian homeworld shimmered in the void, like a blue jewel wrapped in silver clouds. It was beautiful, almost absurdly so. Oceans that glowed with bioluminescent algae, mountains laced with golden stone, cities that hovered on anti-grav currents with no edges, no pollution, no scars. A world that had lived untouched, uninterrupted, for 5,000 years. It was also next. Colonel Trent Maddox stood on the Resolute's main deck as the fleet formed a siege perimeter around the planet. His face was stony, pale under the glow of battle screens. The Carthian message offering surrender still played on loop behind him, a quiet background hum he refused to acknowledge. "Fleet is in position," Bennett reported. "Orbital defense grid is active, heavily shielded. It's the most advanced system we've ever seen." Maddox nodded slowly. "Then we'll bleed them." "Sir," Bennett's voice wavered. "That message, full surrender. They've pulled back every fleet, broadcast it publicly. They've offered everything." Maddox didn't turn around. "Do they bring back the dead?" Bennett said nothing. Across the command deck, tension twisted the air like a wire pulled too tight. Everyone felt it now, something shifting. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were executioners standing at the edge of a precipice. Admiral Roth cleared his throat. "The Galactic Union has declared a unified council, emergency response. They're pulling fleets from all sectors to intercept us. They're coming, sir. We won't just be fighting the Carthians anymore." Maddox turned. "Then we kill them too." That was it. The words that broke the dam. Bennett snapped. "Sir, this isn't justice anymore. We've crushed their military, their outposts, their sanctuaries. We've taken more than retribution. If we fire on their homeworld after a full surrender, we'll be no better than what they were." Maddox stepped forward, his voice like grinding stone. "Better?" He looked Bennett in the eyes. "They turned 3 million people into shadows. My son, your cousins, your classmates, your neighbors. They wiped them out like pests. And now you think we're supposed to stop? Because they're sorry?" He pointed to the planet below, glowing and serene. "They should have thought about mercy before they lit up 9 Gamma." "But they're done!" Bennett shouted. "There's nothing left to prove!" Maddox's voice dropped, deadly quiet. "There's everything left to prove." Then he turned back to the console. "Initiate orbital bombardment. Target planetary shield generators. Once down, proceed to full saturation fire." Roth didn't move. Neither did Bennett. Neither did anyone. "Did I stutter?" Maddox growled. "No, sir," Roth said quietly. "But we've reached our line." And just like that, the unthinkable happened. Bennett stepped back from his station. Followed by Roth, then by Lieutenant Damaris, then Chenko, then the entire fire control team. Maddox stared, furious. "You're mutinying?" "No," Bennett said. "We're refusing to become monsters." Maddox stepped forward, teeth clenched, fists like stone. Then a new voice broke through the silence. A young communications officer, voice shaking. "Sir, priority signal from the outer formation. Speak." "They've opened fire, sir, on our own ships." Maddox turned sharply. "What?" "Strike Group 41. One of the captains declared your orders invalid. Says he's acting under Terran authority. His fleet is moving to disable the forward batteries." Across the display wall, new indicators flickered red. Terran ships firing on other Terran ships. Plasma lances crisscrossed in-system. Missiles launched. Defense drones activated. The fleet had fractured. The rebellion had begun. Maddox slammed his fist on the console. "Bring me visuals." A camera feed from one of the outer ships came online, showing the Iron Valor, a Terran dreadnought, exchanging fire with 3 cruisers from Maddox's core formation. Explosions lit the stars. Hulls split open. Human pilots screamed across open channels. "What are they doing?" Maddox muttered. "They're betraying their own species." "No," Roth said bitterly. "They're trying to save it." In a corner of the deck, the communications officer gasped. "Sir, Carthian homeworld is launching diplomatic craft, unarmed. Broadcast says they want to meet. High Regent himself on board." Maddox's eyes blazed. "Shoot them down!" "Sir Dash Dash." "I said shoot them down!" No one moved. And then, the impossible happened. Security bots stepped into the bridge, not on Maddox's order, but someone else's. They raised their weapons, not toward the enemy, but toward the colonel. "You have 5 seconds to stand down," said Roth quietly. "Fleet Command back on Earth has authorized your removal. We intercepted the override code an hour ago." Maddox looked at him like a wounded wolf, cornered, betrayed, unrepentant. He didn't move. Then, slowly, he reached for the sidearm on his belt. The bots didn't hesitate. 2 pulses of energy. Maddox fell to the floor, his body crumpling beside the command panel. Not dead, but sedated. Silence swallowed the room. The war wasn't over, but the man who waged it without limits was done. The brig on the Resolute was buried deep within the ship's central spine, a secure vault reinforced with alloy walls, magnetic locks, and anti-teleport dampeners. It was never meant to hold high-ranking officers. But today, it held Colonel Trent Maddox. He lay on the steel slab that passed for a bed, eyes open, unmoving. They'd sedated him hard, enough to drop a tank, but even now his brain was clawing back to the surface. He heard echoes, soft voices, metal footsteps, the hum of the ship's damaged engines. He blinked once. The war was still going. But he wasn't in charge anymore. In the command center, Admiral Roth now wore the command insignia. His shoulders seemed to carry a mountain's weight. The fleet was fractured, morale splintered, and Earth's interference had made things worse, not better. Of the original 700,000 warships, nearly 80,000 had declared loyalty to Maddox, even after the mutiny. They'd broken away, forming an independent line in deep orbit beyond the Carthan homeworld. Commanders loyal to Maddox refused to surrender him or stand down. Worse, the Carthians, watching the internal chaos unfold, had seized the moment. Though their High Regent had pleaded for peace, not all factions agreed. From the shattered remnants of Kayla's Prime and Zareth Kal, a fury had risen. Young Carthan warlords who had lost families in the Terran strikes began seizing control of their military remnants. These weren't politicians. These were zealots now, with no interest in compromise, no patience for treaties, just revenge. Roth knew what was coming. He stood before the assembled senior officers in the conference chamber. The air was thick with unspoken dread. "We stopped Maddox," he said quietly. "We did what we had to do. But now we face something worse, a war without leadership, without vision. We're scattered, and the galaxy smells our weakness." Commander Bennett nodded grimly. "The Carthians have begun regrouping, not under their High Regent, under warlords, fanatics. They see us fighting ourselves, and they think we're ripe for annihilation." "We tried to do the right thing," Roth said, "but maybe there is no right thing left, just survival." Across the room, Lieutenant Damaris tapped into the surveillance network. "Sir, new intel from Strike Group Theta. Several of Maddox's loyalist ships have jumped out of orbit, destination unknown. But we caught fragments of encrypted chatter. They're calling themselves the Iron Remnant." Bennett looked up sharply. "They're not done." "No," Roth said. "They're just beginning." Back in the brig, Maddox sat upright. The sedation had worn off. He flexed his hands slowly, his face calm, too calm. A guard stood outside his cell, a young officer named Hale, barely 22, scared out of his mind, but armed. Maddox stared at him. "You believe in what they did?" Hale hesitated. "I follow orders, sir." "That's not what I asked." Another pause. "No, sir. I don't think you were wrong. Just brutal." Maddox stood. "You can't make war without brutality, son. You can't scare monsters with diplomacy." "I saw what you did to Zareth Kal. I buried the heart of their culture so they'd never grow back another sword." Silence again. Then Maddox took a step closer. The energy field crackled in warning. "You're scared. That's good. Fear keeps you alive. But when the Carthians come back, and they will, they won't ask if you supported mercy. They'll burn you alive for being human." Outside the brig, another voice echoed through the halls, urgent, panicked. "Security to Deck 9. We have hostiles. Repeat, internal hostiles on board." Hale turned sharply. "What the hell?" Before he could respond, the lights went red. An explosion rocked the lower decks of the Resolute. Power flickered. Screams filled the corridors. The Iron Remnant had returned. They hadn't abandoned Maddox. They'd come to free him. The boarding was fast and surgical. Loyalist Marines, black armor marked with Maddox's wolf insignia, breached the Resolute's docking port with grav charges. They neutralized the outer guards, jammed the ship's internal comms, and stormed the brig level with brutal precision. Admiral Roth got the alert seconds too late. "They're inside. Deck 9 is compromised. Fire suppression offline. Internal defense turrets malfunctioning." "Who let them through the perimeter?" Roth barked. "Unknown. Could be internal collusion." Roth slammed his fist against the console. "They're pulling him out. Lock down the lifts. Flood Deck 9 with neurogas." But it was already too late. By the time security responded, Maddox was gone. Extracted through a vented breach, launched in an escape pod to one of the Remnant's waiting corvettes. Within 5 minutes, he was off the Resolute, en route to a rogue dreadnought hiding in the outer belt. Roth watched the tracker vanish, and the galaxy shifted again. The Carthan homeworld didn't celebrate. They watched. In their underground bunkers, warlords saw the fleet fracturing and saw opportunity, not for peace, but for vengeance. General Hronath, survivor of Vtora, addressed his ragtag fleet from the wreckage of an old monolith city. "The humans are not united. Their god of war is reborn. They will burn us again unless we strike now." Carthan ships began mobilizing across secret slipstream routes, aiming for human fringe colonies. No more warning shots, just planetary strikes. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Senate panicked. They issued statements of unity, pledges of diplomacy, condemnations of Maddox and the Remnant. But no one listened anymore, because Maddox had already released a broadcast. It reached every Terran colony, every outpost, every angry young soldier who felt the government had abandoned them. His voice was low, calm, resolute. "They took our children, our cities, our peace, and we made them pay. Now they rise again, and your leaders want to shake hands with murderers. I will not stop. I will not kneel. And if you still believe humanity has the right to exist without apology, join me." The message ended with coordinates to a mobile fleet station deep in the unaligned zone. Within hours, ships began arriving. The Iron Remnant was growing. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning again. And this time, there were no sides. Just survival. The galaxy trembled beneath boots it couldn't see coming. Across the outer Terran colonies, alarms screamed. Starports fell silent. Mining satellites vanished from comms. Civilian transport routes lit up with SOS beacons, and by the time help arrived, there was nothing left but debris fields and silence. The Carthans had returned, but not as soldiers, not in fleet formation. They returned as ghosts. They deployed stealth cruisers with heat-dampening skins and grav-slip drives, saboteurs who didn't fight clean. They didn't target military outposts. They struck water plants, oxygen farms, fusion cores, schools. The first was Leonis Station. Population 14,000. Mostly engineers and their families. It exploded without warning, its reactor overloading in a chain of detonations no Terran AI had predicted. The second was Varden's Rest, a planet known for its medical academies. 3 Carthan infiltrators slipped in under diplomatic status. They unleashed a mutagenic aerosol in the primary atmosphere hub. 80% of the population bled out within 6 hours. There were no demands, no messages, just horror. On Earth, emergency sessions were called day and night. The Senate's confidence ratings collapsed. Protesters filled the streets across the capital cities of Mars, Europa, and Luna, chanting, "Bring back the fleet." But Earth's leaders couldn't do anything fast enough, because Maddox had beaten them to the punch. From the dark reaches of the unaligned zone, the Iron Remnant began its counter-campaign. No longer answering to Earth, no longer pretending to be part of the system. They struck back, harder than before. Under Maddox's hand, the Remnant wasn't just military, it became ideological. They released propaganda across the interstellar networks, videos of the dead from 9 Gamma overlaid with Maddox's voice, speaking to the raw anger buried deep in every soldier who had ever felt abandoned by bureaucracy. "This war was never about politics," he said. "It's about making damn sure no human dies begging for peace again." Thousands defected to his cause. Some brought ships, some brought weapons, others brought information, military codes, base coordinates, old grudges. By the time Earth realized what had happened, over 150,000 warships had joined the Remnant. That was enough to rival what was left of Earth's loyalist fleet. Admiral Roth knew the math. He knew the time was slipping. "We have maybe 2 months," he told Bennett during a tense strategy session aboard the Resolute. 2 months before Maddox has a force large enough to challenge Earth's orbital defense grid. "And the Carthians?" Bennett asked. "Don't care about politics. They're exploiting the chaos. They hit us, we hit back, and Maddox turns every scar into a recruitment tool." "What about Maddox's health? He's not a young man. Maybe this dies with him." Roth shook his head. "He's not building a legacy. He's building a religion." And Roth wasn't wrong. In the shadow fleet of the Remnant, Maddox had become something else. They didn't call him Colonel anymore. They called him the Last General. His face appeared in every Remnant base, etched into banners, carved into bulkhead panels, displayed in black and white vids with captions that read, "The fire never dies." But Maddox himself was not celebrating. He knew what was coming. The Carthians had gone feral. He had turned the galaxy into a furnace. Now, even his own advisors began to ask where the line was. One of them, Commander Vex, spoke up in the strategy chamber of the flagship Iron Will, where Maddox now held court. "They're not just hitting our colonies. They're hitting families, civilians. This isn't a war anymore. It's slaughter." Maddox stared at the system maps, hundreds of blinking dots showing Carthian sabotage attacks in the last 48 hours. "I warned them," Maddox said. "We gave Earth a chance. They chose politics over protection. So now, we do what we must." "They're butchering our people, sir," Vex pressed. "But we're turning into them. We glassed sanctuaries. Now they're gassing ours." "They escalated. We responded." "No," Vex whispered. "We led the escalation." Maddox looked up, and for the first time in months, his voice cracked with something close to vulnerability. "I lost my son." The room froze. "I saw the image, the blast zone. They showed it to me. There was nothing left. Just a silhouette burned into concrete. That's all I got." Vex said nothing. "I'm not doing this because I love war. I'm doing this because if we don't make an example, they'll never fear us. And if they don't fear us, they'll try it again. With someone else's son." There was no rebuttal. Not because Vex agreed, but because Maddox had said it like a man with nothing left to lose. And that made him the most dangerous man alive. Back on Earth, the Inner Defense Council met in emergency conclave. Reports from every sector came in. Remnant ships engaging loyalist patrols, Carthian cells hitting Terran infrastructure, even black market AI brokers predicting a collapse in interstellar trade within 6 weeks. The president sat at the end of the war table, bags under her eyes, voice dry. "Do we kill him?" The room was silent. "You're asking if we assassinate the most popular military figure in human history?" one advisor asked. "He's not human anymore," the president said. "He's a movement. If we don't cut off the head now, we're going to be fighting this for a generation." "But how?" another whispered. "His fleet is layered in black site cloaking. He moves every 48 hours. We don't even know where his command ship is right now." The room grew darker. Then a voice from the corner spoke, a civilian advisor, one of the few intelligence consultants left from the early days of the war. I know someone who might. The council leaned in. He's not one of ours. He's not even legal in most systems. But he's found people no one else could. The president nodded slowly. What's his name? The advisor hesitated, then whispered, He calls himself Spectre. 2 weeks later, Maddox stood in the viewing chamber of a secret remnant outpost orbiting the dead planet of Uriel, a former mining world stripped bare and long forgotten. It was quiet here. Cold, but quiet. He stared out into the stars, hands behind his back. His war wasn't won. But it was no longer just about winning. It was about never being forgotten. Behind him, Vex entered, eyes tight. Another Carthan hit. Syra Station, 12,000 gone. Maddox didn't flinch. Retribution plan? In motion. Then a pause. But there's something else. We intercepted a signal, encrypted, untraceable, a message meant for you. Maddox turned. What did it say? Vex looked uncertain. It said, Even a ghost can die. Then it listed coordinates, somewhere in the Draco Shard cluster. Maddox narrowed his eyes. Looks like someone's looking for me. Could be a trap. Maddox smiled bitterly. They should hope it is. Spectre had no real name. If he had one, it had long since been scrubbed from every system across the Galactic Union. His face had been changed so many times, even his own DNA couldn't trace itself. No homeworld, no family, just credits, just contracts, just a body count so vast that it required an AI-assisted kill log to keep track. And now Earth had unleashed him. He didn't come in through fleet lines or breach the Remnant's perimeter with missiles or hacking tools. That wasn't his style. He arrived like a virus, undetected, unsensed, slipping between sensors, shadows, and protocols like they didn't exist. He entered Uriel Station disguised as a Remnant logistics officer. The ID was flawless. Even Maddox's elite guard didn't blink when Spectre passed the first checkpoint. The assassin didn't carry weapons in his hands. His body was the weapon. Nanosheath blades beneath the skin, a neurocore that mapped brain frequencies from 10 meters, eyes that could record every biometric detail and turn it into access. He moved like he belonged. Because for a few hours, he did. Inside Maddox's command chamber, the general stood alone again, not because he wanted isolation, but because the farther this war dragged on, the more even his most loyal began keeping their distance. Worship from afar was easier than facing what he'd become. He stared at the galaxy map projected before him, every sector glowing with either enemy fire or human desperation. He barely heard the door hiss open behind him. "Vex?" he asked without turning. "No, sir," came the voice, calm, smooth, absolutely unfamiliar. Maddox turned slowly. Spectre stood just inside the room, wearing a standard officer's uniform, expression unreadable. He didn't reach for anything, didn't move fast. Maddox frowned. "You're not supposed to be here." "I know." Maddox's hand drifted subtly toward the emergency alarm embedded in the desk. Spectre saw the micro-muscle movement instantly. "I wouldn't if I were you." "You here to kill me?" "Yes." Maddox's eyebrows lifted slightly. Finally. Earth's growing a spine. Spectre took one step forward. "They say you're the reason humanity's feared again. That without you the Remnant would have folded. That if I kill you now, I end the war. Do you believe that?" "No." "Then why take the job?" Spectre's voice didn't waver. Because some ghosts don't deserve to haunt the living. Maddox chuckled, low and bitter. You know how many assassins I've dodged in the last year? Spectre shrugged. They weren't me. For a long beat, the two men stared at each other, one forged in open fire, the other born from silence and shadow. Two killers, one blunt, one surgical, both convinced they were necessary. I know how this ends, Maddox said finally. So do I. Then they moved. Maddox flipped the desk, using it as cover. Spectre rolled left, sliding beneath a plasma arc as the emergency blast doors sealed the room. Maddox grabbed a wall-mounted kinetic rifle, swinging it toward Spectre's silhouette. But Spectre was already gone. He moved like smoke, disappearing into blind angles, reappearing behind Maddox's blind spot, blade flashing from his wrist. It sliced through Maddox's shoulder, spraying blood. The general grunted but didn't fall. He spun, slamming his elbow into Spectre's face, sending the assassin skidding backward. You bleed, Maddox growled. Good. So do you, Spectre hissed. The fight wasn't elegant. It wasn't graceful. It was violent, jagged, feral. Maddox fought like a man with nothing to lose. Spectre fought like a man who had never lost. The room shook from their collision. One of the command panels exploded in sparks. Alarms screamed. Automated lockdowns failed as both men tore through walls and wires. Spectre ducked, rolled, drove a blade straight into Maddox's ribs. The general howled, blood dripping from his mouth. But even dying, he fought back, ripping a support pipe from the floor and slamming it into Spectre's gut. The assassin went down, gasping, metal clattering. For a moment, both men lay on the floor, broken and panting. Then Maddox spoke through the blood. You think killing me will end it? No, Spectre wheezed. But it'll slow it down. They'll turn me into a martyr. I know. Maddox struggled to one knee. And then what? You kill one. Another takes my place. Spectre rose too, blade back in hand. Not if I kill the idea. That was when the doors burst open. Vex entered first, blaster drawn, eyes wide at the blood-spattered chamber. Behind him came remnant Marines, weapons hot. They all froze at the sight, Maddox wounded, gasping, Spectre standing above him. The room exploded in gunfire. Spectre vanished in the chaos. When the smoke cleared, he was gone. But so was Maddox's myth of invincibility. The assassination attempt changed everything. It proved the impossible could happen, that even the last general could bleed, that even the remnant wasn't immune. Maddox was stabilized, but the damage was more than physical. The confidence of his inner circle wavered. Vex began taking more control of day-to-day operations. Commanders started disagreeing in open comms. The fleet's unity was cracking. On Earth, the Senate doubled down. They broadcast Spectre's success across every channel, spun it as a victory. Maddox is no longer untouchable, the president declared. The galaxy will no longer be held hostage by a ghost. But it wasn't that simple. The Carthians took advantage of the distraction. General Hronath unleashed a wave of terror strikes across the inner rim. Earth's water-rich colony of Garrus Prime was hit by a seismic destabilizer, killing 900,000 in less than a day. The oceans boiled. The survivors choked on ash. Spectre's mission hadn't stopped the war. It had only enraged its architect. 2 weeks later, Maddox reemerged. Not at a military base, not aboard a warship, but in a broadcast, bloody, bruised, standing before a black remnant flag. They came for me, he said, voice hoarse. They bled me, and I'm still standing. He looked into the lens, eyes burning. They think they can kill the idea, but the idea isn't me. The idea is you, Every colony left unguarded, every family buried in glass, every soldier who watched his friends die while Earth signed another treaty. He lifted his fist. This isn't vengeance anymore. This is survival. The message went viral. Again. Across fringe worlds, more ships joined the Remnant. Disillusioned veterans, abandoned fleets, rogue commanders. And quietly, Spectre watched from the shadows of a neutral station. He listened. He calculated. And for the first time he realized Maddox wasn't just a man. He was a fire too big to smother. He would have to be extinguished from the inside. The war had become background noise. In every corner of the galaxy, battle reports still came in. Outposts burned, fleets clashed, weapons broke planets. But no one screamed anymore. No one gasped. Horror had become routine. The name Maddox echoed like a warning in every transmission, not just as a man, but as an inevitability. His remnant forces had grown into a separate civilization. Entire sectors now obeyed him over Earth. To the desperate, he was salvation. To the broken, he was vengeance. To the rest, he was proof that humanity had no god left but war. But even Maddox knew this couldn't last. Not because he couldn't win, but because he was running out of pieces to break. On board his flagship, Iron Will, Maddox stood alone in the old briefing chamber. The maps had stopped mattering. There was nowhere else to take. Earth had fortified its inner systems like a fortress. The Carthians were retreating again, not out of fear, but fatigue. The Union had stopped intervening. It was stalemate by exhaustion. Vex entered quietly. "Sir," he said, "there's been a request." Maddox didn't look up. "Request?" "From Earth, from the Senate. Not a trick. An envoy. They want to meet." Maddox laughed quietly. Now they want to talk. "They're offering terms, not surrender, not demands, just an ending." Maddox turned then, his eyes bloodshot but focused. "They want to buy peace with words?" "They're sending Spectre." That got Maddox's full attention. "He's coming back? Alone, unarmed, with no demands?" Maddox narrowed his eyes. "He failed to kill me once. What makes them think I won't put him in a vacuum and be done with it?" Vex paused. "Because you haven't yet. Because maybe even you want this to end." Maddox said nothing. Outside the Iron Will, preparations began. A neutral moon station. Dead, cold, no weapons, no armies, a meeting place, a final card to play. Word spread across the galaxy like fire. Every network, pirate signal, military beacon picked it up. The last general meets Earth's shadow. Peace or extinction. Spectre arrived first. No escort, no mask, just his quiet, lethal presence in the sterile meeting chamber carved into the moon's crust. He stood at one end of the long table, hands behind his back, eyes scanning every corner. He didn't bring a weapon. He didn't need to. Maddox arrived 15 minutes later. Wounded, slower but still unbreakable. His coat dragged with every step, heavy with insignias and blood that never quite came out. They didn't speak for a long time. Finally, Spectre broke the silence. "You've won everything but an ending." Maddox chuckled bitterly. "No ending feels earned anymore. You're not here to listen. And you're not here to kill me." "No." Maddox sat down. Slowly, carefully. Every movement a reminder of the price he'd paid. Spectre remained standing. "I've killed tyrants," Spectre said quietly. "Terrorists, criminals, even saints. But none of them carried the weight you do. Because I carry a species. No, Spectre replied. Because you carry their rage. Maddox met his gaze. They started this. You know that. I do. They burned my son. I know. And they begged for mercy too late. Yes. Silence again. Then Maddox asked the question neither man wanted to voice. Do you think I went too far? Spectre didn't answer right away. Then, softly, I think you went as far as a grieving father could. Maddox looked down. I didn't want this, he said, almost to himself. I wanted justice. You got vengeance instead. Maddox smiled. And what's the difference? One leaves something behind. Spectre finally sat. This ends, he said. Today, you either pull your fleet back, or Earth finishes what you started. They don't have the strength. They do now, because everyone's afraid you won't stop. Even your own men are crumbling. You've bled the galaxy dry. There's nothing left to fear, except you. Maddox didn't deny it. He reached into his coat. Slowly, carefully. Not for a weapon. For a data chip. He slid it across the table. What is it? Spectre asked. The recall codes. Every Remnant warship, every strike group, every AI fire command. My voice deactivates them. That chip makes them dormant. No more orders. No more war. Spectre didn't touch it yet. Why? Maddox's voice cracked. Because I'm tired. He looked at Spectre, eyes hollow. I built a monster, but it only exists because I was willing to become one. If I die, they'll just call me a martyr. The war will go on. But if I surrender the power myself, maybe it ends. Spectre stared and nodded. Then speak it. Maddox activated the chip, his voice grating through pain. This is General Trent Maddox. Effective immediately, cease all combat operations. All Remnant fleets stand down. This war is over. The chip pulsed green. And the war stopped. Across the stars, the change was immediate. Remnant ships powered down their weapons. AI drones shut down mid-flight. Entire fleets halted movement, like a colossal beast finally tranquilized. Earth's forces stood ready, but nothing came. The silence felt like breathing for the first time. Spectre rose. You'll be tried. I know. You might be executed. Good. Spectre turned to leave. Then Maddox said one last thing. I never asked to be worshipped. No one asks, Spectre replied. They just bleed loud enough to be heard forever. Then he walked away. A month later, the tribunal began. Maddox stood trial, not just for war crimes, but for the fury of a grieving species. The hearings were broadcast to all human systems. Survivors testified, victims, veterans, even former Remnant officers. Maddox didn't defend himself. He admitted everything. In the end, the vote came down. Life sentence. No execution. Too many feared what his death might inspire. So they buried him. Not in a grave, but in a prison on a cold asteroid called Vigil, deep in a black zone with no name, no cameras, no broadcasts, just silence. A ghost in exile. But in the bars carved into the asteroid wall, someone had etched words in old Terran script. He made them fear us. And across distant stars, colonies still whispered about him, not with praise. Not with hatred, but with awe. Because once a man lost everything, and instead of crying, he lit the sky on fire.